If you listen to the show at all, I'm a big advocate for take all my data and I want my experience to be better. And I think now with some updates to Google search, we're finally seeing that. And for me, I love it. It saves so much time, right? When your search just knows who you are, what you want. I think back to how maybe I was using the web 10 or 15 years ago. And if you're anything like me, maybe you launched 5, 10 different Google searches, and then you had so many different tabs open. And you're like, man, maybe if only the search just knew who I was and knew what I wanted. Well, now that's here with some new updates to Google search. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about on today's show on how AI search might just be the new personal operating system in the next just interface for all of the information. All right. I hope you're excited for today's show. I am as well. Welcome to Everyday AI. My name is Jordan Wilson. If you're new here, Everyday AI, it's for you. It's a daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter helping everyday business leaders like you and me keep up with all the AI updates because there's a ton and just how we can make sense of it to grow our companies and our careers. So if that's what you're trying to do, it starts here with the unedited, unscripted live stream podcast. But to take it to the next level, make sure you go to our website at youreverydayai.com. We're going to be recapping the highlights from today's conversation and a whole lot more. So, luckily, we have a great guest today, so you don't have to hear me rant on search. So live stream audience, if you could help me welcome to the show. We have Robby Stein, the VP of Product at Google Search. Robby, thank you so much for joining the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Your title kind of speaks to itself in terms of what you do, but for our audience that may not know, tell us a little bit about what your role is at Google, because just search in general seems like it's changing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I spend my time building new products and experiences for search. So the little thing, Google, you go to and type in a question or use a camera to ask a question as well and get information about anything on your mind now. And I'm spending a lot of time, particularly the last 2 years, on how AI can help expand what's possible with search. So you can really ask anything and get effortless information. Whether you're bumping up against something on the street, take a picture of it, go, what is that? To you're in the car and you're having a live conversation with search, to just typing something out in natural language now, where you could put in like multiple sentences right into Google and get helpful info. So that's really I've been spending my time.
So there's been so many updates. I do this every day and it's even hard for me to keep up with, but maybe just bring our audience up to speed if they've been sleeping under a Google search rock, or maybe they haven't noticed. But just give us a quick update. I mean, everything in AI mode, some of the personalization, some new things with Gemini in Chrome. Just how much has search changed in the last few months?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty incredible set of new experiences that we've been able to roll out. And really, like I mentioned before, it's really under this vision of trying to make it extremely easy for you to ask anything on your mind and get information. And in order to do that, you need the best models. You have to have a frictionless, easy experience to ask these kinds of questions. And you want to be able to follow up and have a conversation, particularly for these really complex needs where AI is awesome. You're trying to work through a problem. You want advice about something. You're figuring out what to buy. You're trying to make a decision about what you should do with something for your kids. And it really is this back and forth. And now that's all possible right in the main search experiences. And I'll flag a few things we rolled out recently. I mean, one is that Google search is now powered by Frontier model series on Gemini 3 globally. So if you ask a question in Google and you see a little AI preview at the top, or you go right to our AI mode, that will be powered by Gemini 3 models with really best-in-class reasoning, understanding, and creative capabilities. So it's really an amazing thing to have as part of a core kind of under the hood. And then when you actually go to use the product, we introduced two other things recently. One was called Personal Intelligence, which is now out in a labs experience for subscribers in the US. And what that allows you to do is to opt into an experience where you can securely connect to your Gmail and your photos, and have these apps be context to your questions. And so if you ask, hey, where should I go to dinner my first night on my trip, it may actually do a query to find relevant information and go, oh, because you're going to New York this weekend, these are places that are in New York you're probably wondering about, and it has that context just naturally. So it's pretty incredible. I can talk about some examples later on how I've been using it, but that's pretty profoundly changed how I've used search. And the last thing we did was, we're really trying to make it a lot easier to have a conversation with search. And what we're finding is that when we have an experience that allows for these follow-ups, people report having much larger, better experiences and jumps in helpfulness, and people's reported feeling that they're getting the information they're looking for and they feel good about what they're seeing. So when you on mobile now search and get the little AI overview preview, when you go to expand it, you're now in a conversational experience where you can have a back and forth, really easy to ask follow-up questions, and go right to AI mode through that experience. And so that's just one of a handful of many things that we've done. You talked about Chrome, and there's also new AI experiences that let you ask questions about what you're seeing in the browser. AI mode allows for it, and so does Gemini app. That's another big area we've been investing in. Many more to name, but there's just a handful from the last month.
Yeah, and maybe I'd love to just jump into the personal intelligence a little bit more in AI mode, because even kind of when I first experienced personal intelligence inside of Google Gemini, I was like, okay, yeah, this is amazing. Not just I think most people have come to expect now that chatbots remember your previous conversations, so you don't have to repeat yourself. But when it brings in my other context from my Gmail and elsewhere, right inside of Gemini, that's amazing. But now having that in search in AI mode, at least to me, right? All of those, follow-up searches, and even a lot of times the follow-up work that we do internally, right? Because if you're searching something, you might have to bring up 4, 5, 6, 7 tabs, and then you're going through and you're putting it through your own personalization filters. And now this kind of does it for you, right? Like, can you change a little, or can you talk a little bit just about how big of a change that can be for people who are using this feature?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, a fundamental opportunity to really ask a completely different class of questions. I'll give you an example. I connected Pecan, so it's this personal intelligence project, and I connected it, and I asked a question. I just said, what's a gym bag I should get? Because I'm shopping for a new gym bag. And in the response, it was pretty incredible. Like using secure connection to Gmail, it was able to find other related context to the question. It knew the gym that I was going to. It knew the kinds of bags I've bought recently, and it actually referenced a purchase I made for like a work bag that was kind of this brand that I really like. And so it literally rearticulated like the vibe of kinds of products that I like in that category, and then recommended me a bunch of brands, Annex things that they were so me. Like it just got me. And I could have explained all of that. Like you could theoretically type, here's who I am, here's the designs I like, but no one's going to spend the time doing that. And so it just allows for you to ask this kind of question. And it kind of blew me away, honestly. And so that's one example. Another is, as I was working on some present ideas for my wife, I just like said her name. Like I just said like, okay, or I do this with friends all the time now. I just, when they have their birthday coming up, I just say like, oh, what should I get? Insert friend's name, whoever that might be. And they know who the AI, because it's connected to, emails I've had with this person, even activities I've done with this person, potentially in photos. It has this incredible context. And like you, I loved your intro. Like I want to give it as much context as possible, because then the AI for me can be uniquely helpful and actually help me with these things with as little work as possible. And of course, it needs to be secure and privacy aware. And that's been designed from day one with that in mind. But then once that's all done, you can just let the AI just do a lot more for you. And you can ask these questions that are these kind of questions of taste, open-ended, that you would have probably never asked before.
Yeah, and even when you were just talking there, it seems like, are we at the point where search is jumping over into assistant territory, right? Because like what you said there, that's as if you had a human personal assistant that follows you around and takes notes and makes your life easier. Like, are we at that point where, we can start thinking of search as being a, assistant or agentic, or is there still more work to be done until we can look at search that way?
I think for search, the main focus has always been information. And so I think one area that we like to really think about is how can we be the most helpful to you? And it's usually about when you're learning about something, trying to make a decision about something. And that's really where we play. And I think there's lots of AI products out there. And I think many spend more time thinking about things like productivity use cases, or maybe send 1 million emails for me for my business. Like search is less focused on that kind of construct. But I think over time, there's some themes that will cross all AI products. one is obviously in this personalization. The second one is also, I think, in this category of agentic, which people throw out all the time as a buzzword. But I think of it mostly as a way of describing the technology that can do things on your behalf. It has agency. So if you want to buy something or research something, it might take you hours in the past, but a little AI thing can go run a process and do a bunch of research while you're sleeping, and then send you a ping and say, hey, I finished your report, or hey, I found this cool deal for you. And again, this probably wouldn't be anything that you would personally do yourself, because you're not going to like scour thousands of websites looking at a specific price for every single shoe. But an AI could do that now, which is pretty neat. And so like in search, we think about it as connected to completing the loop for these informational questions. So when you ask about, what are cool restaurants to eat out in New York for my trip, you don't actually just want to know a list of cool restaurants. You probably want to go to one. And so that's an opportunity, we think, to introduce something that we've built around booking reservations and an agentic thing where it connects to Talk and OpenTable and brings through live availability in terms of restaurants, in addition to the recommendations you get, because the AI is able to know you well enough to recommend those things. That's pretty special, and that allows you to then complete the actual task you had at hand. And so those are the kinds of agentic things that we're excited about in search. Obviously, that's going to be true very differently for other products. Like imagine productivity tools that are designed for work. They're focused very differently. Maybe they're going to go fill out a whole spreadsheet for you, or they're going to do a bunch of lead gen research or whatever. But we're really focused on this everyday informational use case.
Yeah, and speaking of that, and I'll ask you this through maybe two different lenses. Maybe one on the product side, building this technology that billions of people are eventually going to use, and then on the consumer side. So one thing I think of is, traditionally using Google search, it's always keyword intent, right? Or maybe that's just been ingrained in me for so long. Here's my my 3-word phrase, my 5-word phrase that I'm going to put into Google. And now it seems more like intent, right? This is what I meant, or this is what I need, even if I don't know. How do you prepare and build for that? I'll ask you this side first. How do you prepare and build for that shift kind of before it becomes needed, or before people, know that they're going to be searching for an intent and not just keywords? So how do you, and your colleagues at Google, build that kind of infrastructure for something that really hasn't existed yet?
Well, I guess there's a technology side, like you said, and then consumer side. I guess on the technology side, we needed to invest in models that could handle natural language questions of any complexity, and also allow for follow-up questions, which is a different kind of technology. Because if you have a stateful follow-up, meaning it takes the context of the prior question, the models and the technology needs to be able to handle that. And that's a different paradigm than a one and done question. And so we had to invest in the technology. We had to research it. We had to do the right evals and really study it and say, are we able to build a system that uses all of the stuff that people want as out of Google to develop really helpful responses to really specific questions, to your point, that are not just keywords. And so that was a partnership with the Gemini modeling team, obviously, to build what became AI overviews and AI mode. And then now we have this capability. In terms of how it's implemented, what I think about as a product product thinker is you want to build in the natural paths that already exist in the product. And so what's interesting is even late, like kind of emerging use cases, there's always some evidence, there's a signature of it in the product. So for us, people were actually trying to use Google this way for a while. It wasn't a huge use case, to your point. People just put a few words in typically, because that's how most people do it. And if you put in like a 10-sentence question into Google, you probably get a results not found, a few years ago. But people would ask questions that kind of were just questions. And they could be simple ones like, what's the weather tomorrow? And then it would like show you the one box with the weather, right? But they did put that question in there. And so you have this base that's this latent behavior, this emerging behavior, I guess. And we now then showed AI overviews with those. So you now get an AI response. Then the user learns over time, oh, if I ask these natural questions that are real, like kind of conversational questions with real English language, not keywordese, it's going to produce this AI thing maybe. And so people learn that, and then they do more of it. And then what we've seen is that this behavioral, this learning grows and grows and grows. And that's one of the reasons AI overviews has grown to be such a large product, used by so many people now, is because people are learning that you can ask a regular question, put that right into Google, and you'll see this thing. And people find it very helpful. And then with AI mode, it's kind of like, oh, I want more of that, or I want to be able to control when I get the AI. So you can go right to the AI and ask these questions. And obviously the next step is once you get a response, you have a follow-up question, right? You want to keep going. And now you can do that in AI mode. So if you think about it, it's like, there's been kind of metaphors in the past around like a lily pond, and you kind of like are trying to build these little bridges or something like that. But you kind of start somewhere, and then you kind of bring someone along in your product versus trying to get them to do like an entirely new behavior or use a completely different product that they've never experienced and have no familiarity with.
Hmm. And it's funny because as you were just kind of describing that analogy, it kind of set off a different set of questions in even my own head, right? Because on the consumer side, even for me now, and especially since some of these new personal intelligence features have been rolling out, I find myself thinking like, oh, well, should I be doing this in Gemini or should I be doing this in AI mode, right? And like, from the consumer side, I guess, is there, do you think that there ever might be a time where someone just goes into AI mode and they're saying, hey, what should I be doing this week, right? And just these much more open-ended questions, but when it does have access, to your own kind of personal intelligence, is it ever going to creep into the like, oh, it's kind of could be used interchangeably with, like the Gemini chatbot?
Yeah, and I think one exciting opportunity is that because personal intelligence works as a service in general, it works in the Gemini app, it works in search. So you should have your context with you. So to your point, regardless of what products you're using, it should be enriched with the information that's most helpful. And in Google, people typically ask informational questions. So for people, there's obviously billions of people using Google. If you're using Google every day, you have these questions. Now those questions can be even more relevant to you, hopefully. And then if you're using a chatbot or a Gemini app, great. For people who are using those products, and maybe people are using those for similar use cases or different ones like productivity or creativity, or you're running your small business, whatever that might be. That has the context too. So what's nice is you don't really need to worry so much. It's kind of like use the products that you're used to for the things that you need it for, and they should be enhanced by personal intelligence in that context that's now possible.
So a lot of what we've been talking about so far is kind of the conversation and the technology and the data that goes in before you land on a web page, which is obviously a big part of search. But I do know that there's been some recent advancements to, what happens after you land on that web page? Can you walk our audience through a little bit of some of the newer kind of AI powered features of, that are now baked into Chrome, and maybe how that might change how we can or should use the web when we're on Chrome?
Yeah, so there's a few really cool trends happening here. One is we call it contextual search, but it's really how does the AI kind of come with you so that it can help you in the places you need it. And one of them is on device, the other one is in the real world. And so let's talk about on device first. So it's two primary devices. You get your phone and your computer, basically. And on both, we've really tried to make it easy for you to ask questions about what you're seeing. So if you're in Chrome through the the core browser kind of URL bar, search bar, you can ask a question, go right to AI mode, or you can ask questions about the web pages you're seeing as well. Gemini has something now where if you're a Gemini app user and just a general user of Chrome, you can get this little kind of drawer slides out, and you can ask questions about what you're seeing as well. And so what's nice is you can now, if you're shopping, you say, is this the best price you can find? Or, if you're looking at an article and you're confused about something, you could say like, hey, like, can you help explain this to me? Say you're learning and you have like a homework page up. Can you help me understand what's happening in question 3? I'm a little confused. And now like an AI will pop out and go, hey, I can help you. And then boom, you got like a step-by-step of what to do, how to think about a math problem, whatever you're doing. So that's really cool. On the phone, there's incredible products from the Google app to Circle to Search on Android, the Gemini app, that all have opportunities for you to bring your context right in. So if you swiped up from Android, you can ask a question about anything you see. You can circle it. So a lot of time people are on social media, they'll circle something, they'll go, what's this outfit? I want to buy this outfit, this look. Or someone see someone on social media as this new celebrity, like who is this person that everyone's mentioning, and it gives information about them. So I think that's kind of a big trend. And then in the real world, it's through the cameras and it's through live. And so you kind of show AI what you're up to. And so we actually have opportunities in the Google app now where you can have a live session. Like while you're cooking, you could have your camera open and you could ask it questions about what it's seeing like live, like with you, which is pretty epic. You can also do it for homework and get help like right with you. And then you can go audio only. And like I do this all the time in the car and I'll just talk to it. Like when I want to learn about something or get smart, and I'm effectively talking to Google in the same way and having a conversation. It's all talking to similar models with similar superpowers and capabilities, but it's kind of adapts to the context of your day.
And that's, that's really powerful. I think, this, like some of those examples. So if you're listening and you're like, okay, like, how can I start using this? I think Robby just gave us like a great example, right? You essentially, you can have Google and talk to it and go through your own, layer of intelligence right there. But, one thing I do have to ask you though, because, it's 2026, we can't not talk about agents. It'd be real bad on me if I didn't ask you about this, right? But, how do you think, proactive search or, even agentic search, how is that starting to, reveal itself within the different Google search products? And, how might we expect that to continue to change throughout the rest of the year?
For us, the way we think about it is we're trying to help you with usually complete the task you're set out to do. And for Google, the thing we see the most, people researching, say restaurants, travel opportunities, booking local services. Those are the ones where when people ask questions, you want to help person complete the loop. Like another example might be getting movie tickets or event tickets. And so our first agents have been in those spaces. And so when you ask about cool restaurants, we show you available open table, like I mentioned, availability. If you want to book a haircut, it can help you find availability. And if they don't have a website, it could even use this really other cool AI to call the local business for you and then get back to you over email about what's going on all through the agent, which is pretty epic too. So I think that's where you're seeing us invest right now. But I do think overall, if you kind of add up what that means, it means that search is becoming more capable of doing things on your behalf or doing things when you're not, directly asking it to do every single task. Whether that's research. So, one question in search through AI mode actually kicks off in the back end, like potentially dozens of Google queries actually behind the scenes. So it's already happening where the models are doing more work for you than what you originally asked for to try to be better at solving your need. But you can kind of take it a step further and help take actions on your behalf down the road.
Yeah, and that part for me, right? Someone that dorks out over this stuff every day is extremely exciting, right? And I think at least when it comes to the chatbot side, right? My own brain is now, shifted to I'm orchestrating, right? I'm giving agents as much data. They're going off and doing work for me at all hours of the day, and I go back in and check on them.
Exactly.
Do you think we ever might get to that point on search, right? Where, hey, Google knows that you need to start looking for gifts for your wife, or, you need to start planning this trip. Hey, Jordan, this trip is a week out and you don't have a hotel yet. Here's some things that you should be looking at. Like, is that going to be kind of how we might be interacting with search in the future? Or might it be that proactive that it's helping us solve issues before we even know that they're issues?
I do think that's a huge opportunity for search to be more useful for you. I mean, I think, again, the way we think about it is it's really in the domains that people want Google to be helpful. And so for search, it's really in these kinds of spaces that I mentioned. Learning, it's education, it's, asking questions about travel, food, TV and entertainment questions, sports. Those are things that we see all the time. And there's an opportunity to, let's say you're doing your fantasy league. Like one idea is like, how could we be helpful? Like every Sunday you got to set your, or whatever, every, Friday you got to set your team. Okay. Well, knowing that, like, how could we have an agent do research as an example and help make recommendations, or even like help you just do it at some level? Like those are the kinds of things that will be possible soon with the right amount of reasoning, intelligence, compute, and of course, personal intelligence to understand you and kind of your personal needs. And so that's pretty awesome. It's just one small example, but I think we have an opportunity to do a lot more for people in this age that combines kind of like the combination of AI, your context of like you, and these tasks that can do things and do research asynchronously behind the scenes. That is a pretty unique mashup of capabilities, and I would look for some pretty exciting products to come from that.
Yeah, and speaking of exciting products, Google's obviously been on a complete tear recently, but even some of the newer updates, right? Things like, the Genie 3 world model and, Flash being, more like multimodal and, just being more multimodal by default. How does this change maybe even what's possible, right? When you do have, Google is much more than just a text-based, or Gemini is much more than just a text-based large language model, right? How do all of these other products, under the Google umbrella, maybe change what's possible for search?
Yeah, what's nice is because it's built on the Gemini 3 model series, search and AI experiences in search will benefit from all that innovation. And so in the future, as the models, for example, have gotten really good at tool use and things like instruction following. So if you ask it to do something, it kind of understands more intuitively what you want. That's awesome because that allows us to innovate much faster and be able to just through a little bit of information, have the model do more. Instead of doing like very heavy training and other processes that were just harder and took a long time. So it should hopefully increase the pace of innovation, and also just let it be more functional because a lot of these are now getting encoded more as capabilities. So let's say you can use a tool, right? Like so you could get a model and you could define a tool. You could give it an API call. You could give it a spec. Say, hey, whenever a user asks about this question, use this API. Here's the information that's available in it, and you can return this information. And great. Okay, well, you just enhanced the whole product without changing the model. You just registered this like tool that does this thing for your company if you're a builder out there, or for your use case if you're building a business or an AI service for accountants or lawyers or whoever. You could add that now arbitrarily, and you just added like a killer feature to your product without having to upgrade your model, fine tune your model, or do anything, which is really amazing. And so I do feel like you're going to see this pretty fast, this acceleration, and as busying and dizzying as it is to follow AI, we'll be able to do even more than ever. But the last thing I'll say, which is pretty neat, is the user will be able to direct that more than ever as well. So if you say like, hey, help me learn about lift in physics for aviation, the models are now starting to be capable to code and actually build its own tools for you. And that's one of the neatest things with Gemini 3 Pro that we've had, where it's generating these little simulations and it will code up on the fly a little like experience that it shows how like a little airplane flying with arrows on lift, and it has some sliders that show like wind speed and all these things. And if you change them, it changes the direction, the lift and the angle of the plane. It's like pretty ridiculous. Like versus imagine trying to explain lift to someone purely through text. Like it's hard. And so the model decided it's going to code up this little thing. And so that's going to let users be in control and directing these technologies. And then the model will be able to reason about it and go, hey, what's the most helpful thing this user needs at this moment, and just code it for you, basically. And that's obviously very new frontier for us, but unlocks even more things that we don't have to design as product builders. It's kind of like give you the tools, and then you can kind of direct it as you need to.
Yeah, the interactive results that I've been getting from AI mode definitely changing how I'm learning and consuming information. But Robby, as we wrap up here, because we've covered a lot, but maybe I want to rewind and just as we finish here, what's your one best piece of advice for people that are looking at search and they're like, okay, with all of these new features, I want to get more out of search. I want to save time. What's your best piece of advice for them?
I think the main thing is to get comfortable asking exactly the thing that you want with as much specificity as you want. And I think people are limiting themselves right now. Like even if you're looking up, say, restaurants in Nashville for a trip, people will just still type. They're just so used to this kind of habit. They'll just say, restaurants in Nashville, and then they want to browse. But if you said restaurants in Nashville for a friend trip with 6 people, focusing on outdoor events that I could quickly afterwards go to a music venue to, and one of us has a dog and one of us has an allergy and we all hate this kind of food. You can literally put all of that into Google now. And very few people probably do, but you should, because now that's where we're going in terms of the complexity of what we can handle. And I think if you want to get the most out of Google, that's the first thing I would recommend. Then the second is there's increasingly a set of these AI tools that if you go to AI mode or in this core search box now, you can hit the plus and see kind of what's there. between Nano Banana and these different tools like Pro and different models, you can just you have a lot of power to you can start uploading things. You can ask it to generate imagery or create an infographic for you explaining how stocks have changed or something using data that it could find. Your creativity is your own kind of limitation and / opportunity. And I would encourage you to poke around just what's possible.
I love that. Great advice from someone helping billions of people use the technology. So Robby, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join the Everyday AI Show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. If you miss anything, y'all, we're going to have it all in our newsletter. So don't worry if you're walking your dog and you're like, wait, what was that Robby said? It's all going to be in the newsletter. So if you haven't already, please go to youreverydayai.com. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you back tomorrow in Everyday for more